I don't think this is a story we did before. TechCrunch has an update to a story that I guess broke in February of 2023, where the U.S. military is notifying 20,000 people, presumably, of a data breach that leaked email information last year.
Yep. Yep.
So the thing that stands out to me is they're not saying who they're notifying. And I think that's relevant. I'll come back to that in a minute, though. Basically, what happened is back in February of 2023, TechCrunch broke a story that a Azure server owned by the Department of Defense was basically wide open to the internet. If you knew the IP address, you could get in, casually browse some sensitive emails, presumably nothing classified or top secret, but it's kind of a big oversight for the Department of Defense.
It's so classic U.S. government. It's getting funny. Like, and this is quite an old story, but like, I really love this specifically, where they're like, we don't comment on, like, it's like, you sure as fuck should. What do you mean you don't comment?
Well, I mean, that, whatever, the military is going to do that. What I think is interesting is it's a Department of Defense server, so you would assume primarily military personnel.
Mm-hmm.
But the rules are different in the military. You don't have like rights and stuff.
Sure, so like, you're not a human anymore. Yeah.
If they're military addresses that were breached, I almost wonder if the government would have to even disclose that to them. I'm wondering what 20,000 people they're actually notifying. Maybe it is Marine, sailor, soldiers, whatever, airmen. My guess is it's mostly civilians or people outside the military that are getting notified.
Probably. Maybe contractors, yeah.
But they don't really get into that. They also don't get into, because they don't comment, what kind of information was breached. But the TechCrunch report was kind of interesting.
What data was leaked?
Like, how easy is it to do this, though? It's super easy, right? To leave a server open wide on the internet.
I mean, yeah, but like, you have to, like, when we're talking about like leaving a server open, we have to think about like, what is it? What kind of server? What are we talking about? Like, are we talking about just like a database, right? Like a SQL server that lets anyone go and fucking peruse,
sure,
right? Like walk through and look at the files. Are we talking about like, who knows, like an internal tool that's been accessible to the wider web?
Some engineer,
without creds or authentication.
Some engineer wanted to be able to access their files from vacation, so they just opened up a port.
And then forgot.
It's cool. Whatever. Who hasn't done it?
Who cares? I think the interesting stuff is the people who just like automated the scans of this, right? So we have many, this is how it was discovered in the first place, is like researchers will have automated scanning tools set up to just go IP block per IP block and just basically port scan every single IP. Now, there are many IPs in the world. I mean, I'll tell you exactly how many IPs are there. There is, oh my God, I think that's 5. Yeah, that's 5 billion. So there's 5 billion IPs right now.
And that's just IPv4, right?
That's just IPv4. So, but we'll just use IPv4 as like an example, because I think IPv6 kind of makes it
more addresses than there are particles in the galaxy, I think is what they say.
Something along those lines. Right, yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and read me an IPv6 address.
AX bytes, 7358.
Exactly. : where was I? That's right. So I think it's really interesting how like they just kind of hop IP to IP, port scan, and then have alerts set up if something's open to take a look at. So like someone just stumbled onto this, right? Like some gray hat, black hat, white hat, whatever, just stumbled onto this IP and was like, oh, what's this? Let's take a look. Oh, wow. This looks really confidential. And it sees like the US stamps and the top secret and
cool.
I'd be so scared if I discovered that on accident.
It's the only way you'd find it, though. They said it wasn't advertised. It was not password protected, but you had to have the IP address to find it. Why don't we use IPv6?
I mean, we're trying.
Is it interoperable with IPv4, or are you one or the other?
No, you can be both. You can have two. You can have an IPv6 address and an IPv4 address and do the same thing. You can have one or the other. But generally speaking, if you don't have both, or you only have IPv6, shit's gonna break because other things still rely on IPv4. So it's not a good time for IPv6. But we're seeing a push to like make the shift. I think once we actually like are down to the last 100,000, 10,000, 1,000 IPs, they're going to start stressing about IPv6 a lot more.
Well, some university in the middle of Iowa is sitting on 1 million unused IPv4 addresses.
The good thing is
an entire Class B subnet.
Yeah.
Tied up in fucking
battleship
community college.
The good thing is that like a lot of IPv4 addresses get released, right? Like at my height, I had, I don't know, 10, 15 being used for various bullshit. And like eventually I stopped needing those and they flurry back into the availability pool and someone else picks them up. So like, but I do wonder what it's like to like be a provider, like a cloud provider, and have to like hoard IPv4 addresses all the time. Like, it's interesting. Anyway, wish Peter was fucking here because he knows about this stuff way more than us.